What's up guys, Handish here, and today I wanted to jump in with a quick guide with a few tips on how to unlock the Reckoner title inside of Destiny 2 Joker's Wild. So a pretty grindy title, but I think for a fan of the new content, it's certainly a neat one, and while it requires a fairly big investment, Bungie have certainly addressed some of the issues like RNG in a slightly different way, and I think it's safe to say this title probably appreciates the time investment a little more than some of the other ones we've seen. So yeah, seeing as I went fairly hard at unlocking this one, I may as well throw some tips out there for others who want to go for it as well. So if you guys enjoyed this video, a rating below really helps me out, but otherwise let's get into it. So firstly, we should talk about the badge and the loot requirements, what you're going to need, and how to get it. So there is quite a lot of stuff to collect for the Joker's Wild badge, and you may be thinking, good lord, how am I going to get all of that stuff? But compared to, Cursebreaker, or the badges required for some of the other titles in the game, this one is very farmable. You don't have the lockouts, you're going for a lot more items, but items that you have a lot of chances to actually acquire. On top of this, I feel like the loot drops fairly regularly, so for the badge, you're going to have to collect all of the new weapons. Now, Reckoning is probably going to be the best way to get most of these, but you can also pick some of them up in Gambit Prime, and specific weapons will actually come from specific bosses in Reckoning. So in the week 1 rotation of Tier 3, or the week with the big kind of blade guys, it is possible to get the Sole Survivor Sniper Rifle, the Night Watch Scout Rifle, the Last Man Standing Shotgun, the Lonesome Sidearm, or the Just In Case Sword. As far as I know, all of these weapons can drop from these big sword blade guys, and that can be on Tier 2 or Tier 3. And then for the Likeness of Oryx, once again on Tier 2 or Tier 3, you can get the Bug Out Bag SMG, the Outlast Pulse Rifle, the Spare Rations Hand Cannon, Gnawing Hunger Order Rifle, or the Doomsday Grenade Launcher. I should mention, any of these weapons are random drops when you clear those encounters, so you have a chance to get them on Tier 2 and 3 of the Reckoning. But on top of this, some of the weapons will actually drop in Gambit Prime as well, so you can get things like the curated Bug Out Bag from killing high value targets, the Last Man Standing Shotgun by defeating blockers or invaders, the Sole Survivor Sniper, which generally will drop if you get 4 kills on an invade, or Spare Rations, which has the highest chance to drop when you bank 50 or more motes in a game. I believe you can also get chances of it dropping when you summon a giant blocker. So that'll do for the weapons. But then for the armor sets, of course, you need to collect full Notorious gear, so that is the Tier 3 Prime Armor. And initially, you will have to do the Drifter's weekly synthesizer upgrade bounty week over week, until you have the powerful synthesizer, and of course, this synthesizer allows you to make Prime Armor pieces at Tier 3. So if you're going for the title, you probably understand most of this already, but when you have the powerful synthesizer, you can create powerful motes, or Tier 3 motes, and these will drop Notorious armor pieces for that set randomly when used in Tier 3 of the Reckoning. You will, however, also have to use the Drifter's helmet bounty upgrades. So on the first week, you can get the Illicit helmet for completing your first helmet bounty, and yes, that's the same one as the Synth upgrader bounty. So if you choose Reaper, for example, you'd get Illicit Reaper 1 week. After weekly reset, you can pick up the Reaper upgrade bounty again, and when you finish it, you'll get the Outlawed variant, and then after another week passes, you do the upgrade again, and you'll get the Notorious variant. So you can do that for all of the sets, but you can also unlock lower tier helmets for all classes once you have a certain tier available. So bear in mind that if you unlock the Outlawed variant of a helmet, all lower tier helmets, so illicit variants, will be available to drop in the relative Reckoning tier. This can be pretty useful if you are behind on one set, because instead of repeating a bounty for any that you're catching up on, you can farm that helm in a given week, and then do the helmet upgrade bounty, if that makes sense. It's a little bit confusing, I know, but basically, if in doubt, Drifter helmet upgrades will always guarantee you a better version of what you have until you have the Notorious versions. Otherwise, you're going to want to farm the full sets out inside of Tier 3 Reckoning. Bear in mind for the badge, you will also need the shader, and this will drop from curated weapons. And you also need to collect 5 emblems for the badge, but each of these will drop from a triumph, which you'll also need for the title. So now, let's talk about triumphs. So there are some specific to Reckoning, and all of these will be required to unlock Reckoner. So for Reckoning specific triumphs, there is Swift Reckoning, which essentially is a time trial run of Tier 3. I believe you have to have 2 or 3 minutes remaining when you actually finish the run. So in a coordinated fire team, especially at 700 power, or at the upper end of the power climb, with the right modifiers, this will be relatively easy to get done. The one skip ahead triumph basically requires you to kill all of the bosses in Tier 3 Reckoning, and it does say complete them flawlessly, but I believe if you complete each of the encounters without dying, then that will actually count. So you don't actually need to do a full flawless run of that. But then for the Get Wrecked triumph, you'll have to get Shadow Thrall kills, as well as powerful enemy kills and precision kills. There are quite a lot that you have to get, but you'll probably just get these done while you're grinding for the other triumphs or loot drops that you'll need for the title. So there are a lot of kills there, but honestly it isn't too bad by the time you've done everything else. On top of this, you do need to acquire the Thorn, and if you haven't done that, I'll link a video down below with details on how you get Thorn. But then there are Gambit Prime and class triumphs. So for the class objectives, having a team is pretty huge. If you can get in with a group kind of respecting roles and helping each other to achieve the triumphs is obviously very beneficial. So maybe if you don't have a team or only have a team at certain times, then try and focus on the more difficult stuff when you have folks around. But also, it may be well worth going to LFG forums or wherever to try and find some folks who are also working on Reckoner, because you can kind of coordinate each player roles and get stuff done together here. But there are 4 different triumphs for specific classes, and these ones are pretty basic. You just need to win a game with a full Notorious set equipped. So you'll have to have all the pieces for all of the sets to get each of these done. However, the triumphant class objectives, so the ones where you actually have to make a lot of kills and stuff, they don't all need to have a full set. So remember, you can consume synths and these will give you more set bonuses before you have the full Notorious set available. So I was working on nearly all of these triumphs before I'd actually had the sets unlocked. First up, let's talk about Triumphant Reaper. Here you'll need to win 20 matches, defeat 1,000 enemies, defeat 100 blockers or envoys, and defeat 50 high-value targets, as well as getting 10 Massacre medals. Now this is going to be one of the really grindy ones. For the HVT kills that you need 50 of, these are going to be the big guys who only spawn in once a match. So essentially this takes 50 games to actually complete. There is a cheeky trick that you can pull for this though, and I only recommend it if you're in a coordinated team because otherwise it's probably not going to work anyway. But what I actually ended up doing is when I was running collector sets and other sets, as soon as that HVT would spawn in, I had all of my armor kind of queued up and I would just hot swap over to Reaper, go kill the HVT, and then swap my armor pieces back, right? Sounds like a lot of effort, and it kind of is. Once again, if you do this with a random team, you're kind of working to the detriment of the game, but also they're probably going to kill that HVT anyway. So if you are in a team and you can do it, then definitely a tip worth bearing in mind. The next one here is going to be Massacre medals. So for this, you need to kill 12 enemies, but each enemy has to be killed with less than 3 seconds in between each kill, right? And honestly, it's probably the trickiest medal to get done in general. In terms of subclasses, because you're probably going to want to pop a super for most of these, Bottom Tree Striker was my best friend as a Titan main, and that's because you can earn super energy back on kills. Also, Bottom Tree Dawnblade, Nova Bomb, and Skull can work pretty well. Arcstrider with Raiden Flux, Tether, or Golden Gun, the 12 shot variant, can be pretty juicy. These supers are going to be about as good as it gets to try and get these medals. Anything with lots of super energy, or that can earn super energy back, are generally the best supers. But for Massacre medals, the map, the spawn, and the enemy type will certainly affect this. From my experience, the map on Titan is going to be very difficult to use to get these medals because the spaces are pretty big and enemies tend to be fairly spread out. But the other maps do tend to have some pretty great spots, so namely Base or Drill on Legion's Folly, and then for Emerald Coast, the Trees or Ruin enemy spawn. And for the new Arcadia map, the new one on Mars, the Top spawn and the Building spawn, I forget the names. But both of these are fairly good places to try and get these medals, but generally, you'll want to have your super up by, the second or third wave of enemies in a round. And when a good spawn comes up, you'll need to push it pretty hard, and you'll kind of need to suss out how stuff spawns, right? So on Base on Legion's Folly, with Scorn, I found that they spawn right behind the silo, in the back, in these kind of huge groups, and then they also flow out of the side doors and will push towards you. So with Fist of Havoc, this was pretty great, but if it's a Vex spawn, you're going to have to let those guys hit the ground because they take a little bit longer to spawn in. You're probably going to want to aggro them towards the center of that spawn area, and this is going to be one of those where a Golden Gun or Tether would work out best. Also, it really helps if you have a team which respects your role, or indeed knows that you're going for that triumph, right? Farming supers, all that kind of stuff, but also having the team let you get the kills for the medal is going to be really friggin' helpful, I gotta say. So like I say, it's a bit of a tricky one. It's going to take the biggest time investment, but particularly things like Arcstrider with Raiden Flux is very potent. It's going to be one of the easier ways to get this medal if you have that option. For the Triumphant Collector, you'll need to win 10 games, deposit 1,000 motes, summon 100 small blockers, as well as 40 giant blockers, and get 15 half-banked medals. So to get half-banked medals, you have to bank 50 motes during a Gambit Prime match. Not too bad to do. Once again, if you're with a team that respects those roles, then it's pretty easy. The worst part of this medal is probably going to be the 100 small blockers, because you have to get an awful lot of them, and it's not necessarily the most advantageous way to bank, but I would try and bank at least a couple of 5s per match, and do this as you work towards everything else. Otherwise, just play the role, try not to play too dangerously when you're carrying a bunch of motes, and again, having a team that respects that role will certainly make it easier, but when it comes to Collector, it's more of a grindy one than a difficult one. Now we have Triumphant Invader. You'll need to win 10 matches, Once again, you need the aura on when you do this. You'll also need 25 sniper or linear fusion rifle kills, 25 shotgun or fusion rifle kills, and they are kind of normal fusion rifles, or 1k voices, which also counts. You'll also need 25 other kills, so machine guns or scout rifles, maybe, tend to be the best to get these. So really the kills kind of speak for themselves. You'll need to drain 100 motes from the enemy bank though. And basically as an invader, this only happens when you're in very close proximity to the bank. I did pretty much all of these on Legion's Folly, and if you're trying to get them, obviously having a super, depending on what that is, can be really beneficial for this. But I found if you can kind of get through the invasion portal, maybe pop 1 or 2 kills off very quickly, maybe if you have heavy, and then push their bank while there's only a couple more targets up, it's kind of like trying to take a zone in a PvP match, to be honest. And you know, even better, if you could pop off a couple of kills very quickly with heavy and then push the bank with a golden gun, a Titan bubble, spectral blades, hammers. There's a whole bunch of stuff that really works here, but another shout, especially if you're in a coordinated team, is to get those blockers sent through as you invade. That really is part of the whole idea here, but if you can be on a team, maybe send a giant blocker and a couple of smaller blockers, or whatever combination of blockers and then invade at the same time, pop those couple of kills, and get in amongst those blockers, that's when this kind of invader perk really becomes potent, and that's when you'll finally start draining a lot of motes. The final thing you'll need to worry about would be Triumphant Sentry. Winning 20 matches, marking 40 invaders, defeating 200 blockers, 150 taken, and getting 20 Locksmith medals. So most things are fairly self-explanatory. To mark an invader as a sentry, you simply have to damage them, so really just spend some time getting used to the enemy spawns, and depending on the map, maybe have something like a scout rifle, even something that you can just tag an enemy quickly, is going to get them marked up. But of course, if you go for a kill, whenever you damage them, that's going to mark them, so that'll count as well. Now for Locksmith medals, these are pretty bizarre. The description of it reads something like defeating the final blocker at your bank 3 times in a round or something, and that's definitely, I don't believe, what is happening inside of Gambit Prime. Basically, to get this medal, you're going to want to kill nearly all of the blockers that come up for your team. So once again, being with a team is really going to help you out as opposed to playing with randoms who may also be going for kills on those blockers. But for me, I basically just hogged that bank, you know, threw on Polaris Lance, sniped across the map at all the other enemies, and then kept a threat level on to deal with blockers. But I've seen the medal pop, you know, when I've rapidly killed 3 blockers. Other times it requires you to kill multiple blockers before your primeval spawns. It might be a bit of a grind, but if you can kill the majority of blockers on that bank, before too long you'll get these medals. It's a bit of a confusing one, not entirely sure how it works or whether it's bugged, but doing what I've done nonetheless will land you those medals. And guys, I think that pretty much sums up Reckoner. So it is a lot of stuff, but the one thing I like about it is that, you know, on the RNG front, it's very farmable, and because the loot drops fairly regularly, if you're into looking for specific roles of stuff along the way, the grind actually feels fairly good. I got the last random weapon drop, you know, when I was kind of working on the last set of stuff I had to do, which was Collector. There was actually spare rations, which I got while doing my Collector role stuff that we spoke about before. So you do have to play quite a lot to get this done, but I'm really glad that it's not kind of gated out by RNG as much as some of the other titles. And as well that there are a lot of things you need to invest into. Some of them are a little bit difficult, some of them more grindy. There'll be bits of this title that are challenging, but I think a lot of players really could get this one done if they want. So hopefully these tips have helped you out. Let us know if you're going for this one, or whether it sounds like too much of a grind. Either way, all the best with unlocking everything. And hopefully we'll see a few more Reckoners out there before too long. So if you've enjoyed the video, guys, let me know down below. If you're new to the channel and you want to see more Destiny content, guides, and all that good stuff, feel free to hit that subscribe button. But for now, thank you for tuning in. I hope the video has been helpful, and that you guys have an awesome day.